Cam Rising is out indefinitely. What does it mean for the Utah football program? How will Isaac Wilson perform going forward? There's a lot of questions and also a lot of sadness right now when you're talking about Utah football. We're going to break down all the emotions on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We are closing in on 3,000 subscribers, so make sure you guys like and subscribe if you haven't had the chance yet. We love interacting with you in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. You can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by the editor of AllUtes when you were talking about Athlon Sports. Still getting used to saying it, Kevin. I'm going to be honest with you, Kevin Borba. Great to have you on. Appreciate you stopping by. And yeah, if you, those of you who listen to the show frequently, I should say watch on YouTube, you will notice I am not in my normal setup. I had another episode recorded, completely planned out, but then the Cam Rising news happens and we had to break it down right away. And that's what we'll dive into today, just what it means for this program. And at the end of the show, we'll even talk about the possibility that Cam Rising can come back for another season. If you can tell by my tone, you know where that's going to go. Let's start right now. I think the very first reaction, Kevin, is I honestly just feel bad for Cam, because despite what all the fans and everyone has said about him not wanting to play, just the injury he sustained and the amount of rehab time, energy, and effort he's put in to getting back to himself, everything he's had to endure and go through, also from the fans, getting all the criticism and everything to try and get back for this season. And just to deal with these injuries where you get shoved into something fluky like a Gatorade cart, and then you have a 290-pound defensive lineman land on your ankle. And it's once again, he's out indefinitely. With the way Kyle Whittingham has talked about injuries, and we've talked about that a lot in the show, that leads me to think he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. We'll see if he can come back anytime post-bye or the bowl game, how it works out. But first and foremost, I feel bad for the player. This is really going to put a damper from a Utah perspective on their chances to win the conference, more than even so that obviously the two losses already have, but just not having the guy who was the biggest reason you were the preseason favorite. It's a tough situation, and just my thoughts and prayers go out to Cam, because I can't imagine what he's going through right now.
Yeah, I feel bad for Cam Rising as a person, as an athlete, right? All of us growing up as kids aspire to reach a certain level, whether that level be collegiate sports, professional sports. And obviously not everyone makes it to the collegiate level. Not everyone makes it to the professional level. And so for his career to sort of be defined by injuries rather than the success he had, like I do think at the end of the day, Cam Rising is, I won't say he's the best Utah quarterback of all time, but he's definitely an all-timer, I would say.
I think he's top 5 for sure.
Right. So he's definitely like on my Mount Rushmore of Utah quarterbacks or Utah players in general. And just for what he did with this program, right? He took them from like this program that was consistently good to a program that was contending at the highest level, borderline playoff contention, right? They hadn't been there yet, at least in the modern era. Alex Smith got them obviously really close, but once they're in the Pac-12, they hadn't been there yet. And so it's really unfortunate for Cam Rising to not be able to really end his career on a high note. I think the backlash that he got, a lot of it was unfair. I put a lot of the blame on Kyle Whittingham.
Yes.
I did. I wrote an article about this. I think it was last year, actually. I probably could have just copied and pasted and published it again this year. But I remember the title being something like Kyle Whittingham and Utah played themselves with Cam Rising charade. And it was like the whole year last year was like, will he, won't he? Will he come back against Florida? Will he come back against, what was it, Baylor or like whoever it was?
Everyone. And
then we didn't find out until the moment after their biggest win of the season that he decides to drop this news. It was after they beat USC that Whittingham tells everyone that Whittingham that Rising's done for the year. And it's like they played this whole charade for a year and a half, 2 years of like, will Cam Rising come back? And I think part of it was Cam Rising wanting to come back. I think part of it was Kyle Whittingham wanting him to come back. And you could tell last year there was some shade at the doctors because it was like, the doctors have to clear him. It's not like whatever. But I think Kyle Whittingham's lack of transparency made the situation a whole lot worse. And we live in an era and social media society where we latch on to narratives And the narrative that you brought up earlier that a lot of people are going with is Cam Rising doesn't want to play. And I don't think that's fair. I know you don't think that's fair to describe his career, but it's been how Utah manages injuries or talks about them, in which they kind of caused a lot of these problems.
There will be a lot of time to talk about Cam's Rising's legacy in the future, but to your point, the way that Utah and Kyle Whittingham, and I've talked about this as well, they handled this whole saga. I think in a lot of people, just the comments you see made about Cam Rising, it's Kyle Whittingham who put Cam in that decision, and I appreciate that he finally came out and said, "Hey, like he is out indefinitely now." I mean, and where
that was more shocking than the injury news to me, that he actually said something without having to be pestered for weeks on end.
I wonder if, and that's where I would love, we'll never hear from Kyle on that probably, but I would love to know, like, is the reason, because he only comments on season ending injury. So he said out indefinitely. Is the reason you came out and said out indefinitely because you knew, like, just going through this again, it was putting the program through so much scrutiny. The fans were starting to rebel, getting mad. And then you have, like, Kyle Whittingham is so beloved by this fan base, and he obviously will be, but like just right now there's a lot of animosity towards a lot of fans and the coaches because of the way they've handled this. And it's been such a mess. And this is where there's so many different angles we can go with this, but this is the one I look back on. The fact that Cam Rising's injury was severe enough for him to be ruled out for the season is exactly why Isaac Wilson should have been inserted to the game on Saturday. I still can't believe with the way Cam was running around. He was clearly not right. And I don't care that Cam was saying, I'm good, I can stay in the game. Every single competitor who has reached that level is going to say exactly that. So the fact that they didn't step in and pull him out is it's terrible. And I totally agree with you. The way that Cam is viewed and perceived and everything, and just this entire saga, it's such a sour taste in your mouth. Like, at least we all thought we were going through this whole Willie won't he play with Cam, because eventually we would at least get him on the field. I didn't think we'd get to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, we did all of that for him never to get back on. It's just hard to believe, and that's where I feel bad for Cam, but I also I understand a lot of the fans' frustrations because of the way Kyle Whittingham has handled this whole saga.
Yeah, I mean, the Kyle Whittingham aspect of it's just really bizarre. I think this kind of speaks to an NCAA rule where it's like we need to just, like the SEC, I think this is their first year doing it, where they do injury reports, and I think that needs to be implemented nationwide, just because at the end of the day, I think it takes away from the program. It takes away from the team itself, who's trying to accomplish something with or without Cam Rising. Obviously, they all love him, but they're trying to accomplish something whether he's playing or not. It takes away from Kyle Whittingham's legacy. And I'm going to be honest, the media is tired of talking about it. Like, you could see it and it's not just local media. It's Brett McMurphy. I know it was, I forgot who else it was, but there was like big national writers. I think Pete Thamel was another one, who were just like, oh, here we go again. And so, yeah, I don't love the way it was handled. And I think leaving him in that game was a disservice to Cam Rising. I think it was a disservice to Utah. And I think it probably, which I don't want to say Isaac Wilson coming in would have been the difference, because he's obviously had a lot of growing pains, but I know he would have given them a better shot, right? I think before he went down with the ankle injury or the lower leg injury, we don't know what it is, but it looks like a lower leg injury is what Kyle said. His throws weren't like, this isn't me trying to take a you-know-what on Cam Rising, but before injury, Cam Rising did not have a strong arm, right?
True.
After his hand injury, he was putting zip on the throws, as some people were saying. To me, it looked like his throws were even weaker. And then you factor in the fact that he gets rolled up on, and it looks like his leg almost snaps in half, which it didn't, thankfully. But it was obvious he wasn't mobile. It didn't look like he could throw a pass beyond 10 yards, and he was detrimental to the team. And so that's how we currently remember Cam Rising, not the Cam Rising that led Utah back to a Pac-12 championship and back-to-back Rose Bowls. And like, we are remembering Cam Rising for like what he wasn't rather than what he did do. And I think that they just it was a disservice. And like you said, you can't count on a player to sort of relay that, hey, I'm not good. I have the same discussion on my podcast, Locked On Buffs, with Travis Hunter. I think Travis Hunter, great, amazing player, probably the best player in college football. He's been injured every single year of his college career. And why have him on the field as much as possible when you could sort of limit his plays so that way you can maximize his potential? I think Cam Rising, same thing, and Travis Hunter, sorry, that was the whole point of this. Travis Hunter will never tell you that he wants to leave the field. Same thing with Cam Rising. So, yeah, I just think it was a tough way to go out. I didn't love that they kept him in there. I didn't love that. And it seemed to me that he kind of threw Cam under the bus by saying Cam said he could go and he wasn't 100%. I didn't like that because it's like, you're the head coach, be the adult in the room. I know Cam Rising's almost your age, but be the adult in the room. And if I'm a backup quarterback like Brandon Rose or Isaac Wilson, I think that hurts me a little bit too, where it's like, you don't have enough confidence in me to put me in when Cam Rising is clearly not 100%. So all around, really tough situation. I hope Cam Rising, I hope he finds what he's looking for with whatever decision he makes. I think it's a very tough situation to be in. I think a lot of fans, analysts, people who comment about everything, I think it's easy from the outside looking in being like, oh, this dude's like, he's older than I am. And like, I make this joke all the time where I'm like, yeah, he's older than both of us. And it's like, we make this joke where it's like, oh, he's old. But like, this has been his life, right? He's dedicated his life to college football. He's dedicated his life to being an athlete. And so for him to just one day be like, I'm not going to do this anymore because everyone's telling me to, that's not going to happen. It has to be something he wants to do. And I hope that he finds that closure and sort of that resolve that he's looking for.
I hope so as well. We're going to talk about that at the very end. I do like that you brought up the what that just like Isaac Wilson, how he should feel about this whole situation, because we got to talk about that. Last thing I just want to say on Cam for this episode, and we'll continue to talk about all week long. I do hate that is the last game that Cam Rising played. Like, that's the final like impression he has as a Utah quarterback on the field, is what I believe is the worst game he played as a Utah football quarterback. And I don't really put that on him, but it just sucks that when you look back, like, oh, what was Cam, this Utah legend? What was his final game? It was that. So that's where I hate it that Cam doesn't get the opportunity to compete, at least in the short term. That once again, there's a chance he'll come back. We can talk about that, and not even for another year, just this season too. So let's talk about how Utah is going to handle this injury moving forward and what we expect out of Isaac Wilson and the rest of this team. We're going to dive into that in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Roy. Hey, Locked On Utes fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over 10,000 to support players on Roy overall across the Locked On College channel. Micro deposits lead to massive changes with the Roy app. You can directly support the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I am choosing someone that if you told me going into the week I'd be choosing this player, I would have said no way, but with the way he played, I came away incredibly impressed, and that's true freshman Dallas Vakalaki. That's a guy with 4 tackles, 2 solo, and 1 tackle for a loss. Dallas was he's a defensive tackle for Utah. He played a lot in place of Keanu Tanavasa, and he did great things against Arizona State, including inside the 5. There was a rush where he got like exploded up right off the snap. It was incredibly impressive. So I just pitched in $100 for Dallas, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 make a difference. Let's show Dallas the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets up your team for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exclusive giveaways to win tickets to games in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter the code Locked On. It's capital L and O and on. So Locked On, and you were entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy and join the NIL game with no subscription and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Support the players, change the game with Roy. All right, Kevin, let's talk about this Utah football team moving forward. There's a chance they could get Cam Rising back. I'm also going to be honest, though. This is where, if we look back on like what Kyle Whittingham said going into, I believe, the Arizona State game, was like, is there a point in the season where you would move forward with Isaac at quarterback? He said, yes, there is. I got to believe, based on the out indefinitely timeline we've been given, we wouldn't see Cam Rising back till middle of November. Maybe it would just be a couple weeks, but that's just not really par for the course for what Kyle Whittingham usually says, out indefinitely. That's not what that word is supposed to mean. So that's where I do feel like Isaac Wilson is this team's quarterback moving forward. There's a lot of people ready to completely give up on the season. I'm not ready to do that. Am I going to sit here today and say that Utah is going to win the Big 12 with Isaac Wilson? No. But I do think it would be a mistake to completely say they have no shot to do it when, even though they have 2 losses, Kevin, they're very lucky they get to play Iowa State and BYU. And they also don't have to play them until after the bye. So I do think this team, even with the way they've looked the past few weeks, like the defense hasn't been great, but they're still good enough to beat TCU and Houston. And I think they should win both those games by 10 points at least, if not more, with the TCU one being in Rice-Eccles Stadium and Houston being one of the bottom teams in the Big 12. I still believe in Kyle Whittingham. I still believe in this roster overall. And they've done positive things, even though we want to see more from them. Can Utah finish the year 4-0 after that? That's asking a lot. I'm going to go with probably not there, but I do think saying this team is completely done is a mistake, considering we have seen Isaac Wilson grow each week. And now that he is the starter moving forward, the amount of time that's going to be put into his development, as well as the reps he's going to get, especially the growing pains he can even continue to experience against two of the lesser teams in the conference. Once again, I'm not ready to give up on this team completely in 2024.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're completely out, right? I think heading into the season, I actually projected that Utah would win the league. So I didn't think Cam Rising was like, I mean, he was a key reason, but Cam Rising wasn't the reason that Utah was going to win the league. So I think it's possible. Now, I think their chances have taken a major hit. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen Isaac Wilson play. I mean, we've both seen Isaac Wilson play. He has a lot of potential. He has the arm talent, the mobility, and sort of that flash that I wouldn't say Cam Rising has, right? But at the same time, he plays like a freshman. He panics. He forces things. It seems like just when he makes a good throw, he's hucking it into double coverage for some reason, or he's underthrowing. Or what was the last game he started against? Was it Arizona, right?
He started the Arizona game, yes.
Yeah. I remember there was one. I don't even remember what the route was, but he threw it like it looked like he was trying to throw it to the defender. Like he just did not see the defender and threw it right to him. Like there's just a lot of moments like that where Isaac Wilson has growing pains. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback eventually. I think it helps that they have TCU and Houston, who are two of the lesser Big 12 teams right now, because that is like the perfect, like, hey, neither of them have good defenses. Houston's defense is better than people realize, but it's like neither of them are supposed to be world beaters. So build some confidence, right? I think for Utah to win the Big 12, I think Isaac Wilson needs to go from like freshman who's finding his footing to like freshman phenom really quick. And I feel like it's I feel like it's an unfair expectation to put on him, especially when there's kind of been this whole like we talked about it a lot in the first segment. This whole like, will Cam Rising do this? Will he not do this? And like Isaac Wilson's kind of just sitting there like being yanked around like, oh, you're gonna play now. Oh, you're not gonna play now. So I think that's a lot to ask of him. I think in a couple of years, I think he could or even next year, he could probably be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. But for him to flip that switch now, I think that'd be a big ask. But I think they have a really good running back who's probably the best kept secret in college football, in Bernard. I just don't know if that's enough.
By the way, really quick, just as you were talking, it's different because of the reasons, but you mentioned how Isaac's just like one moment he's starting, one moment he's not. Isn't it crazy how similar that is to what Zach Wilson went through last year with the Jets?
Yeah, maybe it's just a hereditary thing where like you find these quarterback situations where no one's going to tell you that you're going to play. At least with Isaac, the fan base is like eager for him to play.
Yeah, true. And we've seen a lot of positives from Isaac. I agree with everything you said. If I had to sit here today, I would say, no, Utah is not going to win the Big 12 anymore. I think Cam Rising, when you look at the impact that he's going to make, right now, if I would update a prediction, even I'd probably move Utah to, I'd go 8-4, just like last year. I think they're going to win their next two games. They'll be sitting at 6-2, and then some combination of that ending season stretch. I feel like this team is capable of beating BYU. That's an incredibly tough game. You already lost to Arizona at home and Iowa State, and I do think the Cyclones always have a letdown, so I feel like it's eventually coming. That's one you can win, but just talking myself into 4 awesome Isaac Wilson games in a row, which to beat some of the quality of the teams you're playing, especially like, I mean, Kevin, you cover Locked On Buffs, like you said, and Utah is a really good all-around team, but like Isaac Wilson versus Shedeur Sanders in a quarterback game still, like that's what college football often comes down to. That's tough. So that's where it's hard to see this team reaching their lofty goals. They're not out of the question. There's still a world they can do it. They will have some head-to-heads. And just like in 22, when it seemed like after they had lost to Oregon, like Utah's done. And it's like, well, weird tiebreakers during the conference championship game. Like how'd that happen? Like there is enough things that this Utah team can fix and solve their issues, the tackling, getting some of the players back, the other players back from injury, potentially the fact that you basically have 3 weeks till you play what I would deem an elite Big 12 team again. Season's not over. but it's going to be very hard to overcome this too. And if nothing else, though, Kevin, like we kind of talked about, it's good that Isaac's able to get these reps in, because I do think the future for him is really bright, and he's lucky that he has players like a Dorian Singer, a Brant Keithy, and Mekhi Bernard. Utah's offensive line too is something else I would point to, that the game doesn't fall on his shoulders, and that's something that Utah sits in a nice position because too. Right now for Utah moving forward, I would still have them. I do think this Utah team is still one of the top 10 best teams in this conference. They're definitely not in the top 5, and they're probably even outside the top 8 at the moment. But I do think when the dust settles, they'll be in one of the 10 best teams. I'm still just banking on the coaching and the overall talent on this roster. How do you view this team right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I honestly I feel like we were sold on a dream coming into the year, right? It was like it was the best team ever in Utah history, is what I remember talking about. Not just with you. It was Kyle Whittingham saying that. They bring in they had Brant Keithy. They bring him back. They bring in Dorian Singer. They bring in Alford from Syracuse, who I don't think he's played at all this year that I've seen. They bring in Carson Ryan, who has 2 catches on the year. Granted, he was injured, but it's one of those things where it's like, and Pittman comes back, and like it was like, this is going to be a different Utah team. Like they're still going to be physical, they're going to pat, but they're going to huck the ball around the yard, and we haven't seen that. And I think that's what's hurt them, right? They have all these weapons, and it reminds me of that meme where it's just like that nice car sitting in like a old driveway or whatever, where it's like they're just not being used properly. And I think that's kind of my biggest complaint with this Utah team. And I think Kyle Whittingham was hitting on that today when he was talking, or on Monday when he was talking, was that the passing attack needs to be better. And I think that goes for the players, and I think that goes for the schemes, right? Or the schematics. I don't think it's been beneficial to the quarterback, and I don't think like the quarterback's executed, or whoever it is has executed well. And so I look at this team, and to answer your question, sorry, I would just want to get that out there. But I think Utah, realistically, I would say that they're probably going to finish around 7 or 8 right now, is where I view.
I take that.
I think they're better than Houston. I think they're better than UCF. And I think they're probably in the same realm as West Virginia and Arizona. And then Cincinnati's also towards the top of the standings right now, which I don't know if that'll stay. But
I don't trust them. I'm with you there.
Well, I think it's definitely going to be a disappointing season. I think you can admit that, where it's like, with the expectations that came into the year, they continue down this trend or whatever, I don't think we'll look back at the season fondly, right?
In the episode that was deleted, that was originally going to air tomorrow, I did call this Utah team the most disappointing team in the Big 12. There are asterisks and reasons like, oh, this guy got hurt, that for sure. But any way you want to slice it, absolutely a disappointment for this team to already have 2 losses at this point in the season. So that's where it hurts for Utah. And we'll see just how it looks moving forward. And speaking of just the future and moving forward, people are saying that Cam Rising could come back for an 8th year. Originally, I didn't think that was the case. It does sound like now that he legitimately could come back for an 8th year. So let's talk about that possibility. Should Cam want to come back? Should Utah want him back? That's what we'll talk about in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com today. And with FanDuel, yes, things aren't going great for Utah right now, obviously, but there's lots of other great college football games we got going on out there. Oregon's rolling after their big win. How about Georgia and Texas this week with the Bulldogs traveling out to Austin? That should be a lot of fun. Texas looks like the best team in the country right now. How are they going to fare there? And then in the NFL, there's always great games. I'm a big Vikings fan. My Vikings are back in action, and they're still undefeated. We're going to have the Kansas City Chiefs, the other team that's undefeated, rolling in here. And we still got the MLB playoffs. There is all kinds of fun action you can get in on at FanDuel today. So once again, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com today. All right, Kevin, I'm going to be really cut and dry with this last one. Year 8, Cam Rising.
Yeah. The doctor.
I don't I don't see it. I can't imagine Cam wants to do it. This is not insider information, but why would Cam want to come back in and put his body through it? And I don't know why with Utah as well, with everything that's just going on there with the lack of transparency. And I just can't imagine. Cam has been so great for Utah overall. The Pac-12 championships led him to unprecedented success. 2 Rose Bowls. Cam Rising is a legend. Alex Smith's name is retired at Utah. Cam Rising's name will be retired up there one day too. There's no way that Kyle Whittingham and even if it's not Kyle Whittingham, right? There's no way this Utah football program wants to bank on the health of Cam Rising. Cam Rising is the most injury-prone player I've ever seen. That's not Cam Rising's fault. That's something he can't control. It's just a fact. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. You cannot bank your season on Cam Rising's health for a 3rd year in a row when the last 2 seasons it's gone to absolute crap. I can't see Cam wanting year 8 based on how this has played out. And I can even less than that see Utah wanting Cam back. They respect and are obviously grateful for everything he's done, but I don't know how you can pitch this locker room that your quarterback of the future is going to be Cam Rising when he has not shown the ability to stay healthy over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I think the perfect quote I'll preface my answer with is I don't think it's going to happen. At least if Cam Rising decides to return, right? I don't know for sure if it'll be to Utah, which would be a really tough sort of scenario and stuff. But I think if I was giving advice to Cam Rising, like say he said, "Hey Kev, I respect your opinion. Really want to hear what you want me to do with my life." Like if he came to me, I'd be like, "Of course, Cam. I give the best advice. I'm a Portuguese person. It's what we do." I would say, Cam, if you love the game of football and want to play, I think you give it a shot. But honestly, I don't think that shot should be at Utah, and I don't know if Utah would want that. Right? It's one of those things where you don't want to overstay your welcome. And it feels really hard to say this about someone who we're calling a program legend that, hey, we don't want you anymore. But it's like you said, you're banking a lot on someone who hasn't shown he could be healthy, right? In 2020, he had the shoulder injury. He got concussed in 2021, or he got concussed in the Rose Bowl,
2020.
Tore his ACL in the other Rose Bowl, and then missed all of 2023. Like it was a whole thing where he's had an injury every year. And if he wants to play, by all means, do it. I just don't think that's like, I'm not pretending I'm God or anything, but I don't think, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think the NFL is in his future. I don't think professional football is in his future. He doesn't have the arm strength. He doesn't have the mobility. He's a great college quarterback, and there's nothing wrong with that. That being said, I don't think it's in his best interest to return. If he does want to return, I don't think it'd be in his best interest to return to Utah. I think they both need to move on from each other, right? I don't think the program, the fan base can handle another year of like, will he be back? Will he won't be? And also, I don't know if he wants to. At the Big 12 Media Days, this is a direct quote from him. Someone was asked, would he return for an 8th year? And he said, that's not the plan. 7 years is more than enough. Obviously, he said this not knowing he's going to get injured. But it's like, why take that risk again? Like, I think that's we talk a lot about mental health. I think that's a lot of on his mental health to sort of go through this dance again. And I just don't want him. I don't want his identity to be, I'm Cam Rising, I'm a football player. I want his identity to be, I'm Cam Rising, I'm happy with who I am, I'm happy with how my life went. And I don't know if football at this time is the way to achieve that. I'm not going to pretend that I know his mental state or his mindset on this, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And then in terms of Utah, you need something different, right? You need to move on. You need the program to, Isaac Wilson is a blue chip recruit who is looking to sort of take this program to the next level. And I think it's probably just in everyone's best interest if they part ways. And if he wants to return, by all means, I just don't think it'd be the best.
I absolutely agree with you. And I love the point you made too about we don't know what's going on with his health and happiness. And we wish and hope I can't even imagine what he's going through this last little bit as well. And it's just crazy in today's world of college football too, all the factors you have to weigh and consider. I don't know what Cam Rising's NIL compensation is, but I can't imagine if he were to come back to Utah. And like I said, who knows if this is even where it ranks in the priority list for him, but it's not even going to be the same if he were to come back because of everything that's happened too. So there's just so many different factors that contribute to all of this, but we land in the same page. We can't see Cam Rising back with this Utah football team next year for both sides. It doesn't add up. And it's just going to be very hard for a college football program to, because Cam, wherever he goes, is going to want to be the starter. It's going to be hard for some team to be like, oh, yep, Cam, you're going to come here and you're going to start. So that's where we'll see how it goes. I hope he gets back. I'd love to see him get an opportunity with an NFL team as an undrafted free agent. But Kevin, you said it. I mean, this is just the truth. He does not have an NFL arm. And also the NFL, they're big on the medicals. And that's just going to be, that's a fact. It's just not going to be in his favor. So We wish Cam the best of luck in his recovery. Would love it if he could make it back at some point this season. If he could get like a bowl game send off, that would be awesome. There's part of me that's like, it's valuable reps for Isaac Wilson to develop, but it also could be a special thing if Cam were to get the chance there, right?
Even if it's ceremonial, like let him come out there, take the first snap or something. And like, it reminds me of like college basketball where it's March Madness and your star player is obviously going to the NBA or they're graduating and you sub them off with like a minute left. Like put Cam Rising out there for the opening play. Let him get like his moment, his appreciation. Cause I know Utah fans travel well. Let him get one more moment as the Utah quarterback because I don't know if he'll play again. So, I mean, at least let him leave the field on better terms than how he left it against Arizona State.
I would love, even if it was against Iowa State, I think that would be a fantastic way for him as his final snap as a Utah quarterback, is if they got in the position or a point in that game where he could trot out, take the last knee, and then exit after that. That would be so stinky, so beautiful, and so fitting for the career he's had when he was actually able to play and be healthy. So yeah, it's just one of those. It's a very somber day to be a Utah fan because you just hate how all this has played out, and this team now has to turn the page and get ready for TCU. So that's what we'll continue to be talking about on Locked On Utes this week. But Kevin, really appreciate you stopping by. And you are a busy man, not even when it comes to just covering Utah. Tell everyone where they can head over to check out more of your stuff.
Yeah, you can find me over at Athlon Sports covering pretty much everything under the sun. I appreciate all the support that everyone gives me. Follow me on Twitter. We could talk all things sports. I like to tell people, though, if it's a paragraph, I'm not going to read it. Like, make sure it's concise. Too many complaints out there.
That is very true. That is very true. Kevin, thanks again for stopping by.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. As I mentioned, we still got to get ready for TCU, and we'll continue to talk about the ramifications of Cam Rising injury as it affects this Utah football program. That's going to do it for today's show. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow.